The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on February 6th, 2024.
It's time now for Business Matters, brought to you by Mokulele Airlines. Now here's your host, Pam Tumpop. Good morning, Pam. Happy Tuesday.
Hey, aloha, Gary, and good morning. Happy Tuesday. How are you?
I'm very good. We had a nice rain the past few days, and the last couple of days was sunny, so it's pretty good.
Thank you for tuning in to Business Matters. I'm Pamela Tuba, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and today we are going to talk with two dynamic women, Isabel Guzman, administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Tasha Kama, Kahalui's council member of the Maui County Council, who is working fiercely on housing. So we're going to get updates from both ladies today. But let me first introduce Isabel Casillas Guzman, the 27th administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, and serves in the President Biden's cabinet as the leading advocate for America's I'm looking at a dot in my script, but it's actually not 3.3. That would be way too low. 33 million small businesses and innovative startups. Isabel has made advancing entrepreneurship her life's work. She grew up working alongside her father in his chain of veterinary hospitals, and it was an experience that shaped her life and her understanding of entrepreneurship and its transformative effect on customers and on communities. She went on to launch her own businesses across a range of industries and advise other founders in paving their way to the American dream of business ownership. She served as the SBA's Deputy Chief of Staff in the Obama-Biden administration and then led the California office of the Small Business Advocate. In early 2021, President Biden asked her to lead the SBA, and her nomination was confirmed by a bipartisan vote in the U.S. Senate. Under Isabel's leadership, the agency manages $500 billion portfolio and deploys $40 billion in funding annually to America's small business owners. As administrator, she spearheaded key agency initiatives to deliver essential pandemic assistance to the most vulnerable small businesses and underserved communities. She has also implemented effective strategies that help small businesses and innovative startups gain unprecedented access to capital, contracting, professional networks, technical training, digital tools, and disaster support. And as a result, more than ever before, millions of America's entrepreneurs have the resources they need to start, grow, and build resilient businesses. And she has been ensuring the SBA has been here on Maui on the front lines right after our wildfires. Good morning and welcome, Isabel. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Aloha, Pam. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Aloha. You have really been such a dynamic leader at the SBA. And, you know, they always say there are great tests in life that really bring out extraordinary leaders. Can you talk to us about what the SBA's role is in helping communities recover from a disaster? Because that's something obviously very poignant to us, but also something that requires extreme leadership in times like this.
Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the compliment. And when I came to the SBA, I had obviously previous experience working at the SBA as Deputy Chief of Staff under Obama-Biden. I also had experience in California where I led on our disaster economic recovery support function for the state, having seen, for example, what Paradise, California was going through in terms of its long-term recovery. And so coming to the SBA, I wanted to make sure I applied learnings, not only from the scale that the agency had to achieve to support the pandemic disaster, but ensuring we delivered on our mission to support small businesses and the communities they serve, their employees, their customers, with direct assistance, loans for businesses, nonprofits, homeowners and renters, and really transforming to have a whole of SBA approach to helping communities recover, because all of our programs across the SBA really can speak to starting up and growing small businesses in a community. We, at the SBA in particular, wanted to transform our disaster program so that we could get more efficiency and speed so that the disaster survivors could have a customer experience that was more suitable. And we've done massive policy shifts to increase the amount of funding that can go to our homeowners and renters, for example, providing loans up to $500,000 to repair and replace real estate that had been at a much lower $240,000 level for both real estate and personal property. And we increased for homeowners and renters an ability to get up to $100,000 to repair and replace personal property. So, $600,000 in available capital versus $240 is important for a place like Hawaii or California or anywhere in the West, for that matter, that where we see high costs of living. And for our small businesses, up to $2 million for a 30-year loan, low cost, in order to rebuild your dream of business ownership is something that is really critically important. And so far, we've been able to support over $290 million in approved loans for those affected by the Maui wildfires. And our work continues. We're there for the long haul, making sure that the whole community can recover.
You really have been. And I'm glad that you told that story, because people might not know the history. And so, they've been learning, of course, in Maui of the amazing programs, and to know that the homes went up, from 240 to 500,000 plus, again, the personal property as well. I mean, that is tremendous. And what FEMA has found coming out, and you point out, is that, first of all, this is a homes here cost much more to own and to rebuild than many other places across the country, but comparable to California. So clearly your experience there was a great help to us as we look at this. And of course, even as FEMA has been looking at our rental assistance, they were really sort of blown away. We didn't meet sort of the fair market national average value that they were looking at. And so it's been a significant challenge. But really, when you showed up with the SBA, and we not only learned that there were business loans and equipment loans, I think it was the first time that a lot of people learned that the SBA had these loans for homeowners and for their personal property. Sort of like COVID really relaunched the SBA to showcase a lot of the work that you do, and the loans some of them were always there, and of course some of them were unique to COVID. But that was sort of a great introduction. And now coming in this disaster, you've had such a great presence and really showed us even further the breadth of the work that you do with the SBA.
Well, and I was so pleased to travel right away with FEMA on the ground to Maui and be able to witness firsthand, to scale up my team quickly in order to get assistance to those in need. And truly the SBA has historically helped to fill gaps in the marketplace when people don't have insurance to cover their losses. We want them to be able to recover and rebuild their economy quickly. And I know that as we look towards supporting those businesses, making sure that their employees and customers are able to stay on the island as well, it's so important that we get this assistance out. And so really appreciate the local partnerships that we've had, of course, at the Maui Chamber of Commerce and many others to ensure that we get the word out.
Well, thank you. And it's been our great pleasure to serve and help to do that, because it has meant so much to so many. You have deployed a tremendous amount of resources here on Maui over the last 6 months, and created new service centers so that you've got people with boots on the ground in regions across the island, making sure that both those in Kula and Lahaina have many places to go and get assistance. Can you talk to us about just all of the resources that you've been deploying out here, and help people understand the different locations and the number of people who have been on the ground serving over these past 6 months?
Well, yes, I'm happy to do that. we immediately hit the ground running to create partnerships to open up 7 centers in partnership with FEMA. Of course, our business recovery centers, we have 3 of those, but it's also the disaster recovery centers and the disaster operation centers that are helping our homeowners and our renters connect to our services as well. And so we have over 35 staff members on the ground working with communities, helping the borrowers get through the process of the SBA as expeditiously as possible. And I think that we have really tried to demonstrate that this is a partnership with FEMA as well. As people come in through FEMA to try to get support and assistance, that they're also referred to the SBA so that they can get support with our direct lending, low-cost 30-year capital. And in an environment where we're seeing such rising high interest rates, we're happy to provide this low cost of capital to the community. And while while these loans and the programs have closely continued to work with businesses and of course maintain our capacity and our future ability to come in to support small businesses as well as renters and homeowners with these important programs.
They have been tremendous, and I really also want to say that we're glad we still have some time. I know that many businesses, again, are just saw a trickle-down effect, not only for those deeply impacted in the wildfires in Lahaina and those impacted in Kula, but now, of course, with our lower visitor counts coming in, we're sort of seeing a rolling effect, and of course, you still have those EIDL loans available to impacted businesses, and people still have time to apply, which is great because so often people think, well, it's the short window after a disaster. Can you talk a little bit about that window and why you've got such a long range of window so that as we see more and more effects, there's still room for people to get in and get the help they need?
Well, we know that there's a long tail end of recovery in disasters, and I saw it firsthand in Paradise. Obviously, it takes time to do the environmental assessment, to start to clear debris, to then start to think about rebuilding and get the workforce and the contractors in place to do that rebuilding. So we know that the SBA is going to be on the ground for the long term alongside our federal partners for the economic recovery support that the island and actually, frankly, all of Hawaii needs on an ongoing basis. So as we look to the future, we have a lot of flexibility in our disaster programs to continue to provide service and assistance to all those who have already applied and receive funding, as well as those who are seeking funding in the future. And one important change that I wanted to be sure that I made to the program, learning from our administrative authorities within the COVID EIDL programs at the SBA and the assistance that we offered during the pandemic, was that it takes a while for communities to recover. So to have to start to accrue interest and make payments on these loans immediately was just not a just way to deploy disaster assistance equitably. And so we've, of course, deferred payments and interest for a full year, 12 months after disbursement. And so that is really an advantage, as we know that our communities need time to recover, and why we're committed to being there for the long term and to making these loans accessible. And so regardless of what your status is in terms of applying or midway, if you need assistance, please come and reach out to the SBA through our centers and through our staff on an ongoing basis to get the support that you need.
We are so grateful. And I'm
so sorry, Pam, I didn't give you dates as well, and I should have, but while personal property real estate closed December 2023, and we believe we reached a significant part of the marketplace that wasn't insured, we know that obviously we'll continue to work with anybody who comes through our doors, but on EIDL, it is open through May of 2024.
Yeah,
and that's the economic injury disaster loans that is available to those business owners who face disruption in their revenues, as they're still facing disruption today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That is so true. And I love that you mentioned also that, again, that the payments and the interest are deferred for 1 year, understanding it's going to take time for people to get on their feet. That's so important. And the other thing we learned, of course, coming out of COVID, having a disaster right out of COVID, we have so many people who are already had an idle loan and that they can, on their existing idle loan, ask for reconsideration. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean we know that small businesses have faced extreme challenges over the last few years, and while the deferment period on COVID idle had closed, the SBA continues to work with every borrower to ensure that we offer the most flexibility to keep everybody in current payment status. And if anybody out there is struggling with their idle payments to the SBA, please reach out to our customer service. We're there to work with you to make sure that we can continue to support you, keep you current as we maintain this portfolio. But we saw, and you see this in disaster-impacted areas all the time, places like New Orleans, where I've met businesses with 4 or 5 disaster loans that they've had over the years. Because these are 30-year term loans. We know that as businesses face those challenges, we want to work with them, which is why increasing our customer service and our response times has been such a priority at the SBA when we scaled to meet the needs of the pandemic, and we're continuing to apply those learnings to natural disasters, which we hope benefits the folks in Maui who are still sustaining these losses.
And I'm glad that you reminded us that many other regions have gone through disasters, year after year, or, maybe a little bit of a break in between, but many people have multiple. For us, it's hard to look at that and think, okay, we've already got a loan. How do we look at another loan? But in other regions where you see regular disasters come through, that's interesting to know that many people have had multiple and still work with the SBA on that, which is awesome.
And just if I could add to that as well, that's why on SBA's programs we offer expanded access to capital for physical rebuild. We want you to rebuild sustainably, and there are measures that can be taken as folks rebuild to ensure that they are more resistant to wildfires. And so you can access up to 20% more on our loans to be able to build sustainably. And that's, what we try to encourage around the country is we focus on resilience in the face of climate change, in the face of these more frequent and more costly disasters that our communities are undergoing across the country. And so, we hope to continue to provide that support as folks rebuild and think about resilience for the future so they can minimize the need for the type of borrowing of the future.
That's really important. And I'm glad to hear that as well, because we're looking, of course, after disaster, everybody starts looking at that. But our community has already been looking at how do we be more resilient. And there was some plans in place to do some things. I know I talked to one of the FEMA people on Guam right away. And he said, you folks still have wind telephone poles. And I said, I know, this was the year we were hardening. So there were some plans in place. We just, unfortunately, the fire came before we met some of those marks. But it's good to know that people can access more money as a result of that. And so that in their plans when they rebuild, they can do that kind of hardening and other things they need to be more ready in the future. And one of the things that you have shared, and you have always been somebody who talks about all of your partners, and I know that you work very closely in such a positive way with other government agencies in disaster-stricken areas. Can you talk about that partnership and how you work with the different agencies? And what some of those, stellar results are from that kind of cohesive program?
Well, and it has, at President Biden's direction, been a whole of government approach he was very clear that we're not just sending prayers, we're taking action, we're working collaboratively to ensure that Maui can rebuild, that Maui can be resilient into the future. And so when it comes to the agencies that immediately impact communities after disasters, obviously FEMA, the Department of Defense, Army Corps of Engineers within them, the EPA, HUD, and others are really EDA at Commerce, Economic Development Administration, and SBA really are trying to collaborate to make sure that we can support communities. I know HHS is deployed as well. All the agencies have a role, Department of Energy, in making sure that that as we look at the infrastructure rebuild, as we look at environmental sustainability, as we look at future economic outlook, we wanted to deploy all of our resources, and whether it's disaster specific or not. And I'll give you the example of SBA's whole of SBA approach. We know that as the communities recover, there's also great contracting opportunities on the ground. We wanted to make sure that our government contracting and business development teams deployed and worked with the small businesses so that the small businesses locally would be able to participate as FEMA's dollars are spent on the ground, and Department of Defense works to deploy that type of support. So we've been able to successfully support small business spending in disasters, as an example. And so we've, at the president's direction, really focused on making sure that we are taking strong action, comprehensive look at communities so that it's locally driven, locally supported to be able, through federal programs, locally supported to be able to rebuild a Maui that's envisioned by the people of Maui. And I know that, that's really important, especially as we look towards economic recovery and our long-term role. And I'm looking forward to, being able to come back to Maui in the near future to be able to talk to communities and see as we look at the future and what travel and tourism, as well as future industries around defense and technology and agriculture and manufacturing, what opportunities exist and how the SBA's programs, from our capital programs to our investment programs, to our innovation grants, to our technical assistance resources, how can we support the communities to reimagine the future as we rebuild?
Well, all of that is so critical to us, and we are excited about all the programs you offer. And we really look forward to that. We are an innovative group. Maui throughout the state is known for being very innovative, and we are working so hard to start moving forward. Sometimes things take a little longer, but back later today, we have a meeting to showcase multiple housing models to get housing built so that we can have families get back to some normalcy and some just placements where they can live the way that they wanted to live with their family members, with the services, just like a working kitchen and things that they can start cooking again together and bring their pets back into a home. So we're looking at options for that as well. But all of the programs that you have available are going to be such a tremendous benefit to us as we move forward. And they have been over the years. We have many businesses who have taken out SBA loan. Garrett Marrero, who was a small business person of the year a few years back, and just so many of our companies across the island who can benefit in all of those areas that you mentioned, from ag to the visitor industry, and reframing our visitor industry, as we've been working on for a number of years towards regenerative tourism and looking at diversification. But we've also recognized for all of those industries, without housing and workforce housing, it's going to be very tough, and we're starting to lose some people now. So as the chamber, it's one of our top priorities these days, is making sure that.
Well, and I was excited to know that your conversation today follows with local leadership talking about housing, because 100%, I hear it across the country: housing, workforce housing, availability of those resources on the ground is so important for small businesses, especially in such a competitive environment. I mean, our economy has recovered better than any global economy. We've seen over 14.8 million new jobs. We've seen strong GDP, strong performance in our economy. Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve Bank recently said all those indicators with 3.7% unemployment show a strong economy, and that is also 16 million new business applications filed, over 54,000 in Hawaii. So we know that with this strong economic outlook, there's opportunity, there's hope in the marketplace, but we want to match that with capital, match that with revenue growth opportunities, and especially as we look at communities who have been impacted by climate change and disasters, natural disasters. On top of COVID, we want to make sure that that there are conversations that the SBA can support and back with resources to support that growth into the future. And we need all of our great entrepreneurs on Maui to reimagine their future. We depend on our small businesses for 2/3 of net new job creation, for employing half the private workforce, for producing 40% of our output in this economy. And so we have doubled down at the SBA and the Biden-Harris administration to make sure that as we build the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, small businesses are front and center.
You really have. And we also appreciate your other point, too, which is building the capacity in our local community and working with small businesses and different opportunities. There's going to be so many opportunities through the rebuilding period and our recovery and economic diversification. And so many great ways that the SBA has been involved in helping us with your phenomenal partners. And I just want to applaud you for your leadership and for the tremendous decisions made at the district level and at the national level to ensure we have great support. We've been thrilled to have Hazel back on the ground, Deputy District Director of the Hawaii District Office here frequently, helping people, and even if there's been a hiccup or something, helping us ferret through any issues so that we're getting to resolution and moving things forward quickly to help these small businesses. And we just can't thank you enough.
Well, you're welcome, and I look forward to our next visit in person and to being with everyone on the island and making sure that the SBA continues to deploy top of mind for us in the Biden-Harris administration and at the SBA. So thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you, Isabel. See you soon. Blessings and aloha.
Aloha.
We're going to, Gary, if we can take a quick break, we will have a message from our sponsor, Mokulele Airlines, and then we will have Council Member Tasha Kama when we come back.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
Give Council Member Tasha Kama a call. I wanted to tell you a little bit about her. We always love to get regular updates from her to find out about what's going on with the county council and housing and projects she's involved in. Tasha Kama is the presiding officer pro tempore for Maui County Council. She holds the council's Kahului residency seat and serves as chair of the Housing and Land Use Committee. Her primary focus is to provide more affordable housing units as a key factor for a healthy community and addressing human concerns while balancing the protection of environmental resources in alignment with the Hawaii Public Trust Doctrine. Tasha is the mother of 11, grandmother of 30, and great-grandmother to 5. She has a very large family. She is a non-denominational pastor and longtime community organizer whose leadership in local nonprofits runs the gamut from affordable housing and fair living to Native Hawaiian issues and school boards. So good morning, Tasha. Are you on the show with us?
Good morning, Pam. Yes, I am. And thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I love listening to people talk about me.
Well, there is so much we can all say. You have been such an amazing advocate for such a long period of time, working on making our community better, from the schools to housing to all the work you do as a council member. We really cherish your efforts, and I always say that one of the things that I so appreciate about you is that you're very hardworking. You're always on top of things. You're always willing to listen, and you're approachable. People can really reach out to you and get a quick response and get help.
Wow. Thank you, Pam.
You are welcome. It's all true. It's all true. Well, I know that you have been watching as we have and working so hard on how to help as we look to the devastation that Lahaina has experienced and how to rebuild Lahaina. And you've been really focused on looking at this from a housing standpoint. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing during this time?
Okay, so before I begin, I just want to know that, when the council has held their meetings, it has always been on Blue Jeans. So as of the first of this month, we have transferred over to Microsoft Teams. And I want to say that because, as we have switched over platforms, like anything else, we've been having some a little bit of hiccups, right? Mm-hmm. So my very first HLU meeting will be tomorrow at 9:00, and it'll be on Microsoft Teams. So yesterday when we had our budget meeting, we had a couple of hiccups, people trying to connect, testifiers trying to get on, and members trying to coordinate all of the new platforms, everyone. So I just wanted to mention that online, that if people wanted to show up in the chambers, that's great. But if you're going to go on Microsoft Teams and try to testify virtually, that you might want to try to connect early, try to take care of whatever bugs or hiccups might occur, so that, when it's your time to testify, we don't go through all of the hiccups. So I can't hear you, you can't hear me, your mic's not on, or your camera's somehow not on either. So just wanted to make sure that, because we took a long time yesterday for us to get through our meeting. So just want to make sure that, because I think housing is such an important committee, and that, and I feel an urgency to get housing projects off the ground and turning over the dirt so our people can move in immediately. And while we're talking about, how soon can, we help our Lahaina families get into some temporary housing and then permanent housing and then move back onto their property should they decide to do so, it's time. And, a lot of times we sit around and we talk, we have meetings, but while we're doing these kinds of talk story and meetings and trying to figure out problems, we have our people who are out there struggling and suffering because, we're trying to make decisions. So, so my whole role in, as a chair of the HLU committee is to, when the projects come to me, I want to help them and expedite these projects so that they don't languish in my committee. We don't languish talking about them for days or for hours, and where sometimes the committee meetings go, the testifiers, there's so many of them that we have to actually recess that meeting to go to another meeting so we can actually get discussions done with the members and decisions made. So, I have this sense of urgency, and I hope that our people have that same sense of urgency too. That, I think it's great to come and testify, but I would welcome them writing it, and sending it so that we don't take up a whole lot of time, because a 3-hour meeting doesn't help to do deep dives into so many projects and things like that. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there up front. So thanks, Pam.
Well, I'm really glad that you did, and I you're right. And maybe what we can do is ask the public, because there's so many folks who we are very grateful. We get a lot of testifiers who do testify, especially since we've gone on, as you said, Blue Jeans, and now. So if you don't have Microsoft Teams, I know a lot of us have been maybe slow or not wanted to convert to that for different computer issues. But go ahead and download it now. But your point about written testimony is really important, especially if we can look at it a little bit differently right now. Not that we're trying to limit anybody's access, to testifying online or in person, but you have so much you can say in writing that you can't get in 3 minutes. And we can get your best ideas that way. And that gives Tasha and all the council members more data to draw from.
Yes.
And gives them that deep dive from you.
And it's on record.
And it's on record. So, yes, it doesn't get seen on Akaku, but it is a resource for them that is on record, and it is a great way to get more details in. So, one of the best ways you can really help is to get that in, share more of your mana'o, get it on paper, fully explain, your suggestions, and that way they've got it. I think that's a really great point. As you know, you and I have been looking at, prior to the wildfires, we've been looking at temporary, what we call them, temporary solutions or modular solutions. But I laugh because today, the solutions excuse me, a little bit of frog in my throat. The solutions that we were looking at are solutions that last 20 plus years. But they're modular, meaning they can be deployed quickly. Some of them look like beautiful houses.
Absolutely.
Some of them are a little more modern looking, not just boxes that look like a big old box, but I'm talking about things that would make a family proud to live in. And the beauty of them is they can last 3, 5, 7, 10, 20 plus years. But you give us a temporary solution until the actual rebuilding takes place. Can you, one of the things we're doing later today is a bit of a briefing on that for some agencies. But can you share, some of the things that you've seen and how you feel about some of these temporary solutions where we wouldn't have to move people every 12 or 18 months now is kind of what we're looking at as the next hop. How we can get people in secure places over the next several years until housing can actually be rebuilt.
The idea of modular housing, right, has been we've been talking about that maybe since the time of the fires, right? Because we're looking at things that can be erected quickly, that can be put up quick and taken down quickly, but at the same time has the aesthetics of a beautiful looking 2, maybe 3 bedroom home. And when we think about modulars, we usually think about these trailers, and we think about tiny homes. But I have, and I know you have too, have seen other forms of modular housing, and it's beautiful. You wouldn't even know it. You think that was like concrete made of homes, the ones that we've always been accustomed to. But I've been talking to many developers of modular housing. I'm excited because there is one project that's coming in very soon that is being developed by Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, and they're going to be using modular housing to be able to create what we call ADUs. So that last week at our last council meeting, the council approved what we call Ohana units, or what is known as ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and up to a grant of $100,000. So when we look at modular homes, I mean, to me, that makes sense to be able, because just the cost of a modular home sometimes is funny, depending how small, right? You could do modular to just do a studio, or modular could be a 2 or 3 bedroom. It depends, right? But $100,000 can buy a really great modular home on somebody that has at least 6,000 square feet of land, right? You tie it into your own septic or sewer, or you tie it into your own water system, and it's an additional housing. That's what we're trying to do with that particular ordinance, is to create more inventory. And instead of building from ground up, we're trying to build these skewed subdivisions that if people already have a home, they're just adding an additional home, and we will support them by giving them the grant of $100,000 to put in accessory dwelling unit. So CNHA that's what they have, a program similar to our program of up to $50,000. So, my sense is, okay, CNHA is doing a project similar to ours at $50,000. We're doing ours at $100,000. And So either way, people can either build one, build two, or I don't know, maybe they could stack both of them and get a pretty bigger, decent, especially if your land is, you have more land to put an additional EDU on it. So to me, those are things that we should be looking at and being real creative in terms of how do we create more inventory on property that already has septic, already has water, already has sewer, and not have to. Because the biggest problem that we're having is that there's no infrastructure, right? So we have to build this huge wastewater treatment plant. That's going to come online for that maybe 5 to 8 years. Our people in Lahaina don't have that kind of time.
That's right.
Their clock
We
is
have
running
to look
out.
at other systems because we can do some above ground systems. Because if we keep waiting, we can't get them in the housing. And we knew those projects were going to take a while. So, I mean, they're big projects, major infrastructure projects. But you and I have seen above ground solutions that can work. And again, we're not talking about forever. We're talking about until we can get some of these other things done.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to share with you is, I have a quick question, and then I want to share a point. But my question is, I know, and Alice and I had talked, and at one point, they weren't looking at allowing on ag land if you've been an owner occupied. We have many farmers who live somewhere else but have ag land that could be available for housing. And I think Alice had an amendment to allow that. Do you know if that passed?
I did not know that. I did not know that. And
I didn't get to watch it either, so I didn't know if the amendment passed. But our thought was, and the comment I had shared was that we thought that, again, we understood the concern about not wanting to allow, create a situation of more short-term rentals. But the deed, we were saying that we felt, as in with the other units, that the deed restriction, the 10-year deed restriction, would take care of that, and we appreciated that. So we'll look at that. The other thing I wanted to just say is also, because these are modular homes, one of the other things that it gives us the flexibility to do is if you had families who had, say, sometimes 12 or 15 people living in a home, they could, instead of separating them, they could build a modular home together. And again, these modular homes that can last for years would also give people the flexibility to bring their pets back into their home. So many have had to give up their pets to HARF and other locations. And we all know what our pets mean to our life. I mean, in our family, all of our pets are our babies. We need that for that comfort and for that normalcy in our family. So we really, I remember when some products started coming in, I know we got some calls, I'm sure you did too, about, wait, that's not what we're looking for. And I said, just wait, there's lots of options. And there are so many exciting things, as you mentioned, that look like beautiful homes. And of course, the degree to which they look more custom designed costs more, but there are solutions that are readily available and can be rapidly deployed.
Definitely,
for
sure.
As we get in this area, and now there's so many agencies involved with our recovery, can you share what you see as the council's responsibility in helping us move forward and quickly addressing needs? How in all this, especially we're looking at bills where there's many bills at the state level where they're talking about creating new state agencies being responsible for Lahaina, and all these different bills saying we're going to create this new entity under DBED, we're going to create this new entity under a special housing. How is the county working with the state and federal government, and where does the council see their responsibility in quickly not only serving the people but helping us who've been devastated by the fires to make sure that they're secure and can get back to work, and then looking at our recovery and then our resiliency as we move forward?
Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? That's technically how do we put back the town of Lahaina? How do we put the whole town back together? And what are all the pieces that it took to build that community over all the years that it has been there, right? I mean, that's a historic site right there, whole town. And when the fire happened, everything and everyone that had been there for generations was destroyed. So we have to try to put all of that back. And what took hundreds of years to create, and now we have to put it back together ASAP. Well, it's not going to get done ASAP. It's going to be done as much and as quickly as we're able to. So to me, the council's job is to pass policies that can help to expedite the rebuilding of that community, which also would increase housing opportunities for others. I mean, we had a housing crisis before the fire. The fire just made it worse, right? Because now we have more people who are in dire straits. My sense is that we have to, as a council, whatever it might take to pass policies that are good policies, pass a budget that makes sense so that we can get our people back onto their feet. And part of that also, is also workforce development, right? That's something the county does. So the council itself does policy and actually is a keeper of the funds, right? We say whether you can spend it or not spend it. The mayor or the administration's job is to implement those policies and carry out those policies by each department, right? So, so my sense is, I'm hoping that the state doesn't create all these other types of programs or departments, because you keep building up your government, but a bigger government doesn't necessarily mean better services for your community or for your people. If anything, that's where a lot of your funds get eaten up, is in that administration, it is in those benefit packages, and we have to be better at how we spend our money.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some bills that we were a little shocked to see the other day.
We can't be building bigger government. I mean, we're the county just bifurcated, right, through the past charter to separate the Department of Housing and Human Concerns as two separate entities, right? There's the human concerns part, and then there's the housing part. So the bifurcation means there's going to be a creation of a Department of Housing that's going to need an administrator, probably a deputy, probably a secretary. And yet this department is responsible for all the housing needs on this entire island. And there's a new department, right? And we don't know who's going to be there. We're not sure what they know they're supposed to be doing. And so there's a lot of unknowns, but this is supposed to be activated July 1st of this year. So, in the middle of our housing crisis, we have created a new housing department, and I don't know how much movement we're going to get in trying to move housing forward if we're trying to build a new department. If you get what I mean, to establish a new department and the roles, the responsibilities, the duties, how many people are going to be in this department, and how fast can they hit the ground running?
Yeah, and not just for Maui, but for the county.
Yes, for the county. Yeah. But the housing department, you're supposed to do housing, right? So all these years, the county has never been in the housing, really, right? We have RFP projects out to people, to developers, and they've. I think sometimes that maybe a better model for housing would be leasing, letting people lease land and just put up a vertical, and that's what we're, they get to. It's like the DTL model, right? You're a homeowner.
Yeah.
You pay taxes on the improvement, but not the land. But at least that's half the cost, right, of the purchase of the home. So we should be looking at things like that, leasehold, and then people can at least develop equity in their homes. And maybe that would help to stabilize our economy. I don't know. Well, I'm just trying to figure out how to build houses for our people.
I hear you. And one of the things that I always thought that I benefited from when I was, younger, I was in my 20s where I was able to buy a condo at Harbor Lights. We went vertical.
Yeah.
We had a number of units. There was private ownership. you could sell it. You could make money from your investment to move up and then hopefully buy something bigger later on. And it was a great way for me to get started.
Right. Oh my God.
I think there's new models, and I think the other thing that we often lose in the discussion on housing is the need for workforce housing, but also which can include apartments. And younger people getting started in starting with a rental and building their credit and responsibility.
Right. I think we have to be real creative in how we produce housing and how we make sure that those housings are affordable and how, I mean, when I was a kid, your home was supposed to be your biggest asset, right? And with home ownership came a bundle of rights, the opportunity to create equity, right? The opportunity for you to continue to increase your wealth. That's what that home was supposed to do. That home can still be that if we ensure that home ownership is affordable for our people.
That's right.
Because, right now we're building a lot of rentals, right? Because the cost of housing is out of people's reach, but we still have to create housing, right? So we're creating a lot of rentals, for people. And because the only people who are going to be able to afford a home is those who are at that income level where they can afford it. And sometimes when I look, it's like the middle, right? The middle class is almost not here anymore, right? And the middle class was that class of people that was the backbone of our economy. And if you don't have a middle, then all you have is higher income and low income.
Yeah.
And that's how you create disparity.
Yeah.
And that gap is widening.
Yeah, and it it's one of those things that when people see that vision, children see that vision growing up, that they don't see those role models, they don't see that middle class, they don't see the ability to rise up into something different, and you have to start asking, who are we creating Maui's for? And what opportunities are our children going to have moving forward if we can't get them, it's secure in housing and gives them up the pathways, which and now, I always say when we looked at housing over the last several years, we looked at it with the impact on the environment, but not with the impact on the economy. Today we realize our lack thereof is hampering our economic growth. I'm going to have to say goodbye. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Take care. Okay.
You too.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
to all listening, welcome us to all listening.